Hey, what's going on? It's Joey Myers from the Hitting Performance Lab, and in this video we're going to introduce another F word. It's actually two F words. I'm throwing in another bonus one. Free fall part 1. In this video we're going to talk about three things. I'm going to show you the unweighting principle. Thank you, Bob Hall from Canada. Then we're going to talk about the start of the conservation of linear momentum and how eventually you're going to see how that turns into angular momentum, which is just rotational momentum. And the last thing we're going to talk about is how to turn your body into a projectile. So let's talk about the unweighting principle. I brought a prop here. I'm not as warmed up, and don't feel bad for me. It's only 45 pounds, but I have a dumbbell here. Oh. Okay, probably not going to be able to lift this thing on the first part of the test, the unweighting principle test. But what I want you to do at home is grab something, maybe not quite so heavy, so you don't strain yourself. But we're going to talk about how the unweighting principle, or the free fall, makes your movement seem lighter, especially if you have an object like a 45-pound weight or a bat that is 30 ounces or something that Babe Ruth swung between 42 and 52-ounce bat. The unweighting principle makes things much easier. Let me show you. What I want you to do at home is I want you to stand straight up with the weight in your, whatever your strongest arm is, your right hand and your right hand. And what I want you to do is, just standing straight here, I want you to try and raise this dumbbell up to shoulder level. Now I'm probably not going to be able to do this. Oh, okay, try it again. See if you can see the strain on my face. You can't bend your arm. It's got to stay straight as you come up. Now, what I want you to do is the unweighting principle. We're going to take a step forward. If you're carrying it in your right hand, step forward with your opposite leg. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, once your foot hits the ground out in front of you, then we're going to raise it up. And we're going to see if anything changes. So you're going to take a step. See it again. Take a step. Okay, did anything change? The unweighting principle says that once we create some linear momentum, or forward momentum, FOMO, as some of my readers like to call it, it makes your movement much easier. As you could see, I couldn't do it from a static position. 45 pounds just standing here trying to lift this thing up, I couldn't do it. But when you see me take a step, foot hits the ground, raise up, it wasn't magic. It was just the fact that I'm using momentum to get that weight coming up. And you can see a lot of different athletes use the same thing. You just feel lighter in your movement. Now the second point, this is the start of the conservation of linear momentum. Now what this is for you geek freaks out there who like formulas, this is just velocity times your mass. So my whole mass, along with the weight here, times how fast I move forward is my linear momentum. And as you saw, when I created momentum to lift that weight up, it was much easier for me to do because I had help, I had gravity, instead of me having to use my muscles so much, which I did in the first part. And this is where I talk about that the swing isn't muscle driven. The swing is just using a combination of momentums, linear, turning into angular momentum, gravity, and using the catapult loading system, which I'll talk about later, but using your internal loading mechanisms, your connective tissue. So the third part, and this is just puts everything in a nutshell, is what you're doing with linear momentum as we start our free fall. So after the float, we pick our foot up, and whether we're doing a high leg kick or a slide step, you're just picking the foot up, there's a momentary pause, and then as you start to free fall forward, that's creating that feeling lighter motion to be able to take this bat and put it in the zone. And what you're doing is you're turning your body into a projectile missile. Think about broad jump in the Olympics. Broad jump. Actually, I don't even think they do that anymore. But you remember broad jump in elementary school or high school where you're just standing there at the line, and you had the sandbox, and you had to jump from there and see how far you could go. Versus triple jump, which you do see in the Olympics, where you see them taking a running start. They take 3 steps, and then boom, and then they bounce and explode off the whatever they call it, the board, and how far they go. They can go a lot farther when they have that momentum to help them get there. So in this video, kind of a theory part of the free fall in the part 1, we talked about the unweighting principle. We used the dumbbell to show you that. You can do that test yourself. Then we talked about how this is the start, the free fall is the start of the conservation of linear momentum, which is a human movement rule. Is just velocity times your mass. And then the last thing we talked about is how this creates or makes your body into a projectile missile. If there's anything that you don't understand, please post any comments or questions below the video. Otherwise, make sure we're swinging smarter by moving